My military training and experience taught me that what you capture, you tend to hold under your sole control for as long as you can hold it. That is the case of one governor of a state who still holds the state captive in his pocket 25 years after being the governor of the state. Nigeria has become a fully failed state of critical geopolitical concern. Its failure matters because the peace and prosperity of Africa and preventing the spread of disorder and militancy around the globe depend on a stronger Nigeria. End of quotation. At least they acknowledge that Nigeria, the most populous and economically viable country on the African continent, is, as the Americans will popularly put it, too big to fail. Let us not fool ourselves. There is a lot to be concerned about where Nigeria is concerned. For one, Nigeria's GDP has declined from $510 billion after it was rebased in July 2014 by the then Finance Minister, Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala, and colleagues, to the recent revision downwards by the IMF to $199 billion today. By the end of my tenure in 2007, the country's average GDP growth over my 8 years in office was 6.59%, reaching 15.3% in 2002, one of the highest in the world. This undesirable political influence and corruption and re-establish trust in the electoral system by its citizens. The INEC chairperson must not only be absolutely above board, he must also be transparently independent and incorruptible. Political. Nigeria must find a way to prevent electoral interference at every level. Protecting elections from foreign as well as local malevolent actors is critical. Doing away with foreign malign influence is crucial for safeguarding democratic integrity and ensuring that election outcomes truly reflect the will of the people. On the local level, we should implement and enforce clearly defined financial regulations for political campaigns, establish effective control and enforcement mechanism to ensure compliance with financial regulations, and intensify activities to prepare and secure the voting infrastructure, such as safeguarding the technology used to collate, transmit, verify, and disperse election materials. Cybersecurity level. Prior to elections, we should have a transparent exercise witnessed by international observers, where so-called penetration testing of the election system and infrastructure is conducted for all to witness and verify. Prevention of electoral violence. Nigeria must ensure the physical security of the commissions and voters. Our security apparatus must be professionally trained to protect our citizens during elections, not to be participants in electoral malfeasance. Impunity. Politicians corruptly getting themselves declared as winner in an election where voters do not matter an asking winner declared loser to go to court, where justice cannot be assured, is the easiest and best way to kill democracy, particularly electoral democracy, in any nation, Nigeria not exempted. Let me talk a little bit about corruption generally in Nigeria. And I quote, "Among our people, generally corrupt, liberty cannot long exist." Edmund Burke. Let me return to Achebe and the trouble with Nigeria. Corruption goes with power. Therefore, to hold any useful discussion of corruption, we must first locate it where it properly belongs, in the ranks of the powerful. Corruption in Nigeria has passed the alarming and entered the fatal stage, and Nigeria will die if we keep pretending that she is only slightly indisposed. She is very ill. Ranked 150 out of 180 countries in the Transparency International 2022 Corruption Perception Index, Nigeria's ranking places it in the bottom 20% of the Committee of Nations, and illustrates how systemic and embedded corruption is in the country. It is, in my opinion, and those of many, the most serious developmental challenge to the nation. Corruption in Nigeria, Patterns and Trends 2024, which provides novel conclusions while identifying several areas of deepening pathology. A. In 2024, corruption continued to rank among the most important problems affecting Nigeria. B. More than 700 billion naira in cash bribes were paid by citizens to public officers in 2023. C. Most bribes are paid in the street or in public officials' office. D. Private sector bribery is increasing but continues to be less prevalent than in the public sector. E. Issues specific to the criminal justice system are a sore point. I will tackle that in the next section. F. Nepotism and bribery in public sector recruitment and promotion. In recent years, we have witnessed outrageous open recruitment of children of judges onto our judiciary benches by their parents. Why has the Nigerian Bar Association allowed this to persist? Maybe they tried, they failed. G. The manipulation of ethnic sentiment to further corrupt agendas. The last political exercise is replete with ample evidence of this. The survey findings indicate that corruption in Nigeria has penetrated every layer of society. H. In 2023, 5.1 bribes were paid on average by every bribe payer in Nigeria in the 12 months prior to the survey. Out of all Nigerian citizens who had at least one contact with a public official in the 12 months prior to the 2023 survey, 27% paid a bribe to a public official. Happily, there was some good news to report. 70% of Nigerians who were asked to pay a bribe in 2023 refused to do so on at least one occasion. The bribery refusal rate was found to be highest in the Northwest at 76%, although recorded refusal rate above 60%. Public officials continue to be blatant about bribery requests, but less so than in the past. Nigerians are increasingly reporting bribe payment to official authorities. I will conclude this section by quoting Achebe once more. I quote, "Nigerians are corrupt because the system under which they live today makes corruption easy and profitable. No consequences." That's my own addition. I continue with the quotation. "They will cease to be corrupt when corruption is made difficult and inconvenient." End of quotation. The greatest antidote of corruption is leadership integrity, with consequences for offenders no matter who they are. Rebuilding the judiciary. I quote, "True peace is not merely the absence of tension, it is the presence of justice." Martin Luther King. According to William H. Newcomb, CEO of the World Justice Project, I quote, "The rule of law is a durable system of laws, institutions, norms, and community commitment that delivers 4 universal principles: accountability, just law, open government, and accessible and impartial justice." The judiciary in Nigeria is a very pale version of its once internationally esteemed self. Politicians, after rigging elections, openly ask their rival to go to court in Nigeria because they are aware that they have completely compromised the judiciary system. A number of judges are in the pockets of wealthy politicians and individuals and make judgments not based on the law of the land, but to the highest bidder. This, my learned audience, is one of the most effective strategies of state capture. Discussed next. That must be excised from Nigeria like a surgeon cutting out a malignant cancer. Transparency International suggested that corruption in the judicial system breaks the basic principle of equality before the law and deprives people of their right to a fair trial. In a corrupt judicial system, money and influence may decide which cases are prioritized or dismissed. Perpetrators may get away unpunished, while victims are left with no answer and no justice. I continue with the quotation. "Simple reforms can prevent this. An independent body and public oversight can guarantee that appointments in the judiciary are based on merit rather than favoritism or nepotism. Judicial personnel should be adequately trained and they should receive fair salaries and pensions to make them less vulnerable to bribery. Judges' personal liabilities for decisions should be limited, and to protect them from pressure by powerful interests, only credible and transparent investigations should be conducted against them. Civil society, the private sector, and the media will all have a vital role to play. End of quotation. What is state capture? What is state capture? The World Bank and Transparency International defined state capture as one of the most pervasive forms of corruption. Quotation: a situation where powerful individuals, institutions, companies, or groups within or outside a country use corruption to shape a nation's policies, legal environment, and economy to benefit their own private interest. State capture is not always overt and obvious. It can also arise from the more subtle, close alignment of interests between specific business and political elites through family ties, friendships, and the intertwined ownership of economic assets. What is happening in Nigeria right before our eyes is state capture. The capture of national assets by political elites and their family members at bargain prices, the allocation of national resources, minerals, land, and even human resources to local, regional, and international actors. It must be prohibited and prevented through local and international laws. Public institutions such as the legislature, the executive, the judiciary, and regulatory agencies, both at the federal and local levels, are subject to capture. As such, state capture can broadly be understood as the disproportionate and unregulated influence of interest groups or decision-making processes, where special interest groups manage to bend state laws, policies, and regulations. They do so through practices such as illicit contribution paid by private interests to political parties and political elite and for election campaign, vote buying of presidential decrees or court decisions, as well as through illegitimate lobbying and revolving door appointments. The main risk of state capture is that decisions no longer take into consideration the public interest, but instead favor a special specific interest groups or individuals. Laws, policies, and regulations and decisions are designed to benefit a specific interest group. Often times to the detriment of smaller firms and groups and society in general. State capture can seriously affect economic development, regulatory quality, the provision of public services, quality of education and health services, infrastructure decision, and even the environment and public health. My military training and experience taught me that what you capture, you tend to hold under your sole control for as long as you can hold it. That is the case of one governor of a state who still holds the state captive in his pocket 25 years after being the governor of the state. Insecurity. A series of overlapping security, political and economic crises has left Nigeria facing its worst instability since the end of the Biafra War in 1970.